Okay, we are live.
Okay.
We'll give it a couple of minutes for people to join us. Hopefully someone besides my wife will watch tonight. She is our only viewer so far.
I just opened Facebook and saw my face. That was a little scary. Now I see you. It's a little better. I just opened Facebook and saw my face. Now I see you. It's a little better.
We'll give it a couple of minutes for those of you who are watching, just so we can reach a critical mass. Reach a critical mass. All right, I think we have 6 people watching on Facebook right now, so I think we can get started. Thank you everyone who is joining us at home for Estate Planning and Charitable Giving 101. This is a very timely topic. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Bobby Covitz, and I'm the Executive Director at Temple Best Shalom. And joining me tonight are two of TBS's wonderful lay leaders, Harlan Louis and Michael Rothstein. And I will turn it over to both of them so they can introduce themselves. Harlan, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Bobby. My name's Harlan Louis, and I'm an estate planning attorney at Bailey Cavallari. And my prior life, I was also a CPA. So I've been doing this estate planning and tax work for a little over 25 years now.
I'm Michael Rothstein, and I'm a financial advisor with Ameriprise Financial. Have been for 38 years. I've been a member of Temple Best Shalom for over 20 years and heavily involved in finances for, I don't know, about 14 of those years as treasurer, finance chair, and campaign chair of the campaign to pay off the mortgage. So long time commitment to Temple Best Shalom.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us tonight and for your commitment to TBS. And why are we doing this program? I think, as I mentioned, it's very timely. And whether you are my age, in mid 30s with a young family, or you're an empty nester, it's never too early or too late to think about your estate plans and how your family is going to be protected and cared for, and also how you might be able to support TBS in the long term. And there have been a lot of tax law changes over the past couple of years. You might have heard things like the CARES Act and the Secure Act, and we'll get into a little bit about that tonight. But our goal is to provide you with a very high level overview of some estate planning and charitable giving tools for you to be aware of. And I want to make it clear that we are not providing actionable legal and financial advice tonight. If you don't have an estate planner or someone who can help you with your will, or a financial consultant, seek one out that works well for you or your family. And we can certainly be of use in that regard if you need some options. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Michael, who is going to kind of lead us off by framing this conversation within the bigger picture of TBS's finances.
Great. Thanks, Bobby. And we're going to try to, I think the agenda tonight is I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes, and then Harlan's going to talk about estate planning and charitable giving for 15, 20 minutes. And then we're going to open it up for questions. So we don't want to have this as a total lecture meeting and everything. So Bobby, if you could put up that pyramid, I'd love it.
Absolutely.
Because what I want to do is give you a framework for how we have run the finances at the temple and how we look at things. And hopefully this will help educate a lot of people on, because I know one of the comments we've heard over the years is everybody gets tired of being hit up for money nonstop. And, so I think this pyramid does an excellent job framing how we do the budgeting and everything. The bottom two layers, the ongoing day-to-day operating budget and the religious school, our annual budget is about $1.1 million right now. And that's an ongoing issue, and obviously goes up, takes care of everything, salaries, personnel, paying the rabbis, paying the staff, running the building, programming, and everything that's involved in running a temple. While it is a temple, for religious purposes and programming, it is a business from our end that we have to pay the bills and everything. Those two bottom layers out of the $1.1 million, dues, facility upkeep and security fee, and religious school fees make up about 82 to 85% of the budget. They do not cover 100% of the budget and never have. Therefore, we have a lot of fundraising, most of which we try to make fun, have fun events, but they do have to pick up a good chunk of that other 15%. The only other area we try to get some income, but it's not huge, is we rent out the facility. Well, we did before this latest crisis on evenings and different groups when we're not using it, try to pick up a little revenue that way. So the fundraising that we do, the spring fundraiser, the high holiday appeal, the raffle, which used to be a Hanukkah raffle, which kind of fell by the wayside, but then we have a new raffle, which is a lot of fun. We've started in the last couple of years, our general fund contributions, and then a bunch of miscellaneous stuff like advertising in the windows, script, and things like that, make up about $100,000 or 10 to 12% of the budget. And that we try to do every year. And we've been pretty consistent, and most of our members have been very generous. They've come to expect those things. And we've been very successful with keeping those things going and meeting our budget the last few years, which has been a tremendous accomplishment. Some of you members who've been around for a long time remember the days in the 90s when that wasn't the case. And so we are very, very appreciative of everybody participating in all of those events. The middle two categories, the sponsor those in need and specific donations for projects that a member may be passionate about. When Steve Herman and I were doing our campaign meetings to raise money to pay off the mortgage, that came out loud and clear that a lot of people would be willing to give money to the temple if it was for a specific project rather than just throwing it in the operating budget. So I would say those two middle categories are our greatest need. And we have a program going now, we've always had it, we call it over and above. And the over and above, those people who can afford to give more than standard dues, not only do they help those who can't afford to give standard dues, but they help fund those special projects. We've had about 40 people over the years who consistently give 500 to 1,000 or so more than the needs. One of our greatest goals since we've paid off the mortgage has been to increase that to maybe 50 to 100 people and get that to, if we had 100 people that gave $1,000 more, it would offset those people who can't afford to give and provide funds to do these special projects and maintenance needs. That's a huge opportunity for us, and we call that the over and above. We've basically got two categories, which is about one is The first level is giving $500 more than your standard dues. The other is anything above that, 5,000 more, 3,000 more. But again, it's not so much the number. We would love to have that number, 40 people going up to about 80 or 100 that consistently give over and above. The second from the top.
Michael,
Yeah,
first.
go ahead, Bobby.
I just want to let, for those of you who are watching, know that renewal packets are going to be going out this week, probably. And as Michael alluded to, dues are such a critical source of support for TBS. They make up over half of our budget. And while we recognize this is a challenging time, if you can give above and beyond, that's amazing. If you can give whatever works best for your family, that's amazing too. Every little bit helps right now. And just putting that on your radar, that dues are so critically important for TBS as you think about your level of support for TBS heading into next year.
Yes, and personally, as someone who now has kids out of college and as an empty nester, I feel an obligation to continue that and give over and above, because the people that use the temple the most also have young children in Hebrew school, and are many times their budgets are tight. So it's kind of those of us who don't use it as much are in a position many times to help those who use it the most. So, it's kind of a payback in that. Real quickly, the second from the top, the capital or building fund campaign, as most of you know, we had from 2008 to 2018. And when we started that way back in 07, the plans was when we hired Benji as an assistant rabbi, which I think almost everybody would agree was a phenomenal decision. And we started the campaign to pay off the mortgage because it took $120,000 a year off the budget and enabled us to fund Rabbi Benji. And our dream back then was that the day that Howard Apotheker retired and Benji started, the temple would be debt free. And that's exactly what happened. We reached that goal. We felt it was a very phenomenal accomplishment. It was many hundreds of people participated, and we are very appreciative of that. As of right now, to my knowledge, I'm not on the board, we have no intention of a capital campaign. That comes periodically. We did it, we accomplished it. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen again, but right now it's not on the drawing board. It's not our focus. The top pyramid is top of the pyramid, the endowment. We've got a nice little endowment at the foundation, which Bobby's going to talk about in a second, but it's not large. It's not large enough to produce any significant income. Long range, that's the long-term goal. So I think the bottom line with the pyramid of our fundraising is we have to meet our day-to-day operating, about $1.1 million budget. The middle category, we would really like to improve the over and above to meet the maintenance needs. It's a 25-year-old or 30-year-old temple building, and some of the special projects for improvements that many members have expressed an interest in doing, and all that. And then there's the endowment would be more of a life and legacy. So I'd like to turn it back over to Bobby to talk a little bit about that program that you're going to hear a lot about.
Thank you, Michael. So Life and Legacy is a community-wide initiative that TBS is really excited to be a part of. 18 agencies and synagogues across the central Ohio, across the Columbus Jewish community are involved in this exciting initiative that is a part of the Harold Grinspoon Foundation. The Harold Grinspoon Foundation also runs PJ Library, which is a program that provides free Jewish books on a monthly basis to kids across the world. And Life and Legacy is it's a program that encourages Jewish organizations and Jewish communities to take advantage of this massive intergenerational transfer of wealth that is underway. Trillions upon trillions of dollars are going to change hands from heirs, from parents to heirs over the next couple of decades. And Jewish communities and organizations need to be poised to take advantage of this, and which is why Life and Legacy was developed. It's so easy for Jewish organizations to focus on the annual needs because they're so important. But how amazing would it be if TBS had such a sizable endowment where we could count on 10 to 20% of our budget coming from perpetual funds that are provide an annual rate of return to TBS every single year. That would make fundraising a lot easier, and it would just free up, it would give TBS a lot more financial flexibility. So over the next 4 years, TBS is going to go through this program with the other Jewish agencies and synagogues, and we're going to learn a group. Harlan and Michael are part of the Life and Legacy Committee for TBS, and we've had a couple of trainings to this point, trainings that focus on how to have the legacy conversation, how to market a legacy plan. And over the next 4 years, we're going to work with the TBS community to secure new letters of intent to make a planned gift. And more details will be coming about this over the course of the next couple of months. And we're going to talk about this in more depth at the annual meeting. But this is something to keep an eye out for. It's very exciting. And this is all about securing the future of Temple Beth Shalom via long-term endowments and sustainable sources of funding. Michael, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, we're trying to run both over and above. People have other commitments with the Columbus Jewish Foundation and so forth. And this is a long-term program at the same time. So it's, while they sound like they're competing, I really don't think they are. I think they complement each other.
They do. And, one important aspect about Life and Legacy is that it's intended to break down myths about charitable giving or estate planning. You don't need to be 65 and wealthy to start making your, estate plans. Someone my age can leave 1% of my retirement, whatever that might be, and God willing, 60 plus years. But I can do that now. It's a very easy step that someone can take to give back to TBS and the Jewish community. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Harlan now, who's going to walk us through some of the high-level ins and outs of estate planning.
Great. Thanks, Bobby. As he mentioned, my role is to talk about some basic estate planning documents. And Bobby, I don't know if you have those slides that they had previously. On page 4, we talk about last will and testament, and that may be helpful for people to see. But when people think of estate planning, they think primarily of their will. And a will does a number of different things. First and foremost, it directs your assets when you pass away to the individuals that you want to receive those assets. And there are many different ways that can be done. It can be to individuals, it can be to trusts, it can be to charities, and oftentimes a significant part of someone's estate plan is making a charitable bequest. Either that's something that can be done for and just a set number of dollars, or it can be a percentage of the overall estate. In the will, also oftentimes, always you want to select an executor. The executor is the person that will administer your estate. They'll be the person responsible for gathering up the assets, paying any expenses, filing any tax returns, notifying all the appropriate persons, and ultimately making then the distributions to your beneficiaries. So it's an important job, and you want to select somebody to step in that role, and oftentimes think about alternates. So if the person that you've selected to handle that important role can't serve, that there's somebody else who can step in and administer that role. And then the other thing that is often very important in a will is to select guardians for minor children. And oftentimes when I first work with a family, it will be shortly after their first child is born, because now that important decision needs to be made as to, who do you want to care for the children if you're not around. So that is really the most basic estate planning document. For the will, it handles the passing of assets. We call those the probate assets, but assets that don't otherwise have direction or beneficiary designation, something like that. If you have, say a retirement plan or life insurance that has a beneficiary designation, that's going to pass according to that designation, not according to your will. If you have property, perhaps maybe a bank account, investment account where it's held joint with rights of survivorship, or there's a transfer on death direction, that asset upon your death will pass according to that beneficiary designation or that payable on death designation, not according to your will. And so sometimes it's important for us as we work with families to do their estate plan to make sure that the will and the beneficiary designations, the joint asset designations, all work together to do what the family wants, and that they understand the different directions that each of those items can provide. Oftentimes with families, they'll have trusts as well, and Bobby, that's on the next page, and I won't go into too much detail on this tonight because I want to make sure that we leave time for questions. But there are all kinds of trust agreements to do all kinds of different things. And some of the primary benefits are that they can be confidential, and they avoid the probate court process. Oftentimes, it's a good vehicle to help provide for young children, either minors or young adults. And this can also be a vehicle, oftentimes, to make a charitable designation. Similar to what we talked about in the will, you can provide in your trust that payments go to a charity, either a set dollar amount or a percentage of the trust assets. In addition to those documents, when we talk to families about estate planning, we want to make sure that we talk to them about financial power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, and living will. And again, those are documents that I'm not going to spend too much time on, but basically those provide for, if you are incapacitated, who's going to make those decisions on your behalf that you ordinarily would do. And Bobby, I don't have a slide for this one. Okay. But basically the financial power of attorney is if you're unable to pay bills, sign tax returns, sign any kind of important legal document, this is where you can designate somebody to do that for you on your behalf, and perhaps avoid the need of having to go to a probate court to have a guardian of your estate appointed. Along similar lines, there's also a healthcare power of attorney, and that's a power of attorney to deal with any healthcare matters. So it's someone who makes decisions on your behalf if you're unable to do so, authorizing care, having access to medical records, those types of things. And again, in each instance, it's important to have alternates that are named in case you don't, the person that you've named is unable to help make those decisions. And example, oftentimes when I talk with families, is that for a healthcare power of attorney, if two spouses have named each other, it's important for them to name alternates as well. If unfortunately they're in the same accident, something like that, you want to make sure that you have somebody, another trusted person, to be able to make those important healthcare decisions and be able to step in your shoes and do that for you. So that is a real quick overview of the primary estate planning documents that we talk to people about preparing. And from that, the other thing that was asked to talk about is charitable giving strategies and how best to do that. And we have up here retirement plan assets, so some bullet points on dealing with them. And retirement plan assets oftentimes are the best asset to use to do charitable planning because of the tax ramifications. Oftentimes for families, a significant asset they'll have is their retirement plan, their 401k, their IRA, spent their whole working life or a large portion of it building up that asset. Now in retirement, they're using it to use it for their living, for their expenses. But then from an estate planning perspective, the thought is, what do we do with that when the owner passes away? And one thing that can be done is to have a beneficiary designation, name a charity, either for the entire amount or for a portion of it. The benefit in doing that is that when the charity receives those assets, they don't have to pay tax on that. When you transfer your IRA to a child or another beneficiary, when they take the money out, that's taxed to them. And so, the net gift to a child ends up being after tax, where the charity doesn't have to pay that tax. And so it's a way to really leverage the gift and get more to a charity as compared to what it would be if it went to just an individual who had to pay tax. The other thing, something that's been in the law for a while now, is the ability to make charitable contributions from your IRA during life. And so for individuals that are over 70 and a half, historically they've had to take required minimum distributions from those accounts. And what the law allows is an ability to, instead of taking required minimum distributions, is to direct funds from your IRA to a charity. And no matter how we calculate it, that is the best way from a tax perspective to make a charitable gift. And so it's something that a lot of my clients will do, especially people that are charitably inclined. This is a way that they can benefit charity that they feel strongly about, and also do it in a way where they get a real tax benefit in doing so.
Harlan, can I add something along those lines?
Absolutely.
As a financial advisor, we do a lot of that kind of a gift during people's lifetime, and it is easy. And it literally is, for my clients over 70 and a half, they give me their charity, whether it's a religious organization, I would hope our temple, or OSU Hospital or Children's Hospital. We fill out a form, and the amount sent in the home office sends the money directly to the charity. It meets the RMD, the required minimum distribution rules, in their amount they have to do, but they are not taxed on it. So even if they're not itemizing deductions, that IRA RMD goes to the charity and they save the taxes on it. It is a tremendous strategy and very easy to do that every financial advisor should know how to do it. So.
Yeah, that's great, and thank you for that. And also by doing it that way, it ends up providing an Ohio tax benefit as well. And if you were to take the funds out of the IRA and then make a contribution, there's no Ohio charitable deduction. And so this is a way to use this strategy to get what's basically an Ohio tax deduction where ordinarily you wouldn't have one. And so for people that have retirement plan assets, they're above 70 and a half, and they're making charitable gifts, this is a real good strategy for them to do that.
And then to add one more thing, we're in a unique year right now because of the COVID crisis. The government in the CARES Act said if you have not taken your RMD this year, you can skip it and go next year and take it, which is a big break for a lot of people. But if you're 70 and a half and you're giving money to charity, I would still do the RMD to the charity because it may reduce your required minimum distribution in future years. And it's a better asset to give to the charity than after tax money. So strongly consider that even if you're not going to take your full RMD this year. Hopefully this is a very unique year and the only time we have something like this for lots of reasons. But I'd strongly consider talking to your financial advisor about that.
Harlan, there's, over the past couple of years, there's been this alphabet soup of Secure Act, CARES Act. Help people just understand what they need to know from an estate planning standpoint or charitable giving standpoint, the differences between these two pieces of legislation that came about.
Yeah, the Secure Act made a number of changes to these retirement plan assets. Like for one, you now take your required minimum distribution starting at age 72. So it used to be 70 and a half. They've changed that. There are a number of other changes. One big change was used to be if you would leave your IRA to a child after you pass away, they could then stretch that out over their life expectancy. And it was a strategy that a lot of people used to try and minimize the income tax hit by taking out a lot of money from the IRA all at once. Now, generally, that stretch is gone, and a child would need to take out the IRA within 10 years. And so where some families had planned to do it well beyond that, now it accelerates the time when it needs to be taken. And the reason the government does that is because they want their tax dollars, they want their tax share that much earlier. So it's another reason now why giving that money, some or all, to a charity makes good tax sense, because the Secure Act changed a tax benefit that a lot of families used to have. And when you compare that to a charity who's not going to pay tax on that money, that can make a big difference. The CARES Act, that's the recent legislation that dealt with the pandemic and trying to help people in that ways, help charities as well. They did a couple of things that will affect some people, not most people. For individuals that give a lot to charity, and they're limited by generally 50% of their adjusted gross income that they can give each year and get a deduction for. The law increased that to 60%. So people that are big givers as compared to their income can give a bit more this year. The other thing, when there were changes in the tax law from President Trump's first tax bill, there were some changes where a lot of individuals no longer itemized and didn't get a benefit for their income tax. They didn't get a benefit on their income tax for charitable deductions. Now you can take up to $300 charitable deduction starting in 2020, even if you don't itemize. So there's a tax benefit for some families that otherwise wouldn't be there for that CARES Act.
And in addition, Harlan,
yeah, go
like I
ahead.
said a minute ago, if you're over 70 and a half, we're giving the IRA, you can give that and get the deduction by giving it directly to a charity, even if you don't itemize. That's a real critical point. That's why we're seeing so many people give their IRAs directly to the charities.
Right.
Over 70 and a half, for those over 70 and a half.
And then I think the last thing I'd mention as far as a tax strategy and something to consider is, because of the increase in the standard deduction, a lot fewer people are itemizing their deductions. The numbers are way down because of the impact of the tax reform, and people that used to itemize and used to take deductions for their charitable giving don't now, because of the increase in the standard deduction. And here in Ohio, a lot of people get impacted by the cap on the deductibility of state and local income taxes. And so one strategy to deal with that, to try and increase your deduction, is to bunch your charitable gifts in a year so that you go above that threshold. And the way it works, kind of an oversimplification, is if each year your itemized deductions would come close to the standard deduction, but not over it, you think about moving as many of your year one contributions into year two so that you load up more in one year, and you think of it as you want it all to hit in the same year. And a vehicle that's really very good for doing that is a donor advised fund. And the donor advised funds, the Jewish Columbus has a number of them. They work great. They're like having a charitable checking account. You make a contribution there of money or gifts of stock or other interests. Put it in your charitable checking account, your donor advised fund, get an immediate tax deduction, and then you can have Jewish Columbus pay that to various charities later on. So you get the deduction currently for charitable contributions that you make later on. And that's what I do, working with Jewish Columbus. And probably the biggest benefactor of our donor advised fund is Temple Beth Shalom, and it works great. It's completely seamless. Every time I want to make a contribution to the temple, or we get a dues invoice, I talk to people at Jewish Columbus, send them a quick email, and it's done and it's paid. And so it's a really simple way to do what a lot of people are already doing, but receive a tax benefit in doing it.
Thank you for that, Harlan. That really is a great point. And, to expand upon that and how this might look, if you wanted to set up a donor advised fund in support of TBS, you could bunch multiple years worth of dues in 1 year. And let's say over the course of 3 to 4 or 5 years, pay out your dues on an annual basis through your donor advised fund. And it just simplifies things so much. So thank you for mentioning donor advised funds.
By the way, through the Jewish Columbus, I believe the minimum is only $2,000 to open one, and they're fantastic for everybody, but especially people under 70 and a half. who don't get the advantage of that IRA RMD direct donation. So that's a tremendous strategy. I also use that and end up now doubling about 1 year and skipping a year to get the deduction. The other thing Harlan touched on is the best asset to give is a stock that's highly appreciated, because then you can avoid the capital gain and get the deduction at the same time by going to your donor advised fund. Unfortunately, at 70.5, you cannot do RMDs to a donor advised fund. But for people under 70.5, it's a tremendous strategy.
Harlan,
did you want to touch on the life insurance and the legacy planning and with IRAs?
Yes.
Yeah,
as far as the leave a legacy plan, and one of the things that we're asked a lot about is life insurance policies. And a life insurance policy is oftentimes a good tool to use for charitable planning. A lot of families bought life insurance policies as income replacement if something would happen as a young parent, as they build up retirement assets, children get older, the life insurance maybe doesn't fill the same need, but that can be a wonderful asset to use as a charitable gift as part of this legacy planning, something where it doesn't take away from other beneficiaries, but can provide a benefit. A lot of other families also historically had purchased life insurance to pay estate tax. And the estate tax thresholds are so much higher now than they've ever been, that a lot of people that did estate tax planning in years gone by don't need that planning now, or the life insurance policy doesn't is not necessary to pay an estate tax. And so that's another vehicle that for certain families is a really good charitable giving vehicle.
And can I give an example of that? Because life insurance is one of these powerful vehicles that if somebody's insurable, of course, you could give part of the life insurance benefit. Life insurance companies will let you divide up the beneficiaries and give 25,000 or 10% or so to a charity and the rest of family. Or what I had last year, a client who is 70.5, and they're planning on giving and started already a good chunk to Children's Hospital, about $1 million, and they're giving it out of their IRA through the annual gift, and they will fund it with the beneficiary from the IRA, and they're using life insurance to replace that asset. So their family is not short out of the IRA. They've actually are going to receive a significantly more money because the life insurance is a tax-free to the family. The IRA is going to the charity. Tremendous strategy if it doesn't fit everybody, but for the right person, it's just powerful.
Harlan, do you know any of the detail, or Michael, any of the details of Jewish Columbus's insurance policy plan, where they will pay a certain number of years worth of premiums, or they'll split the premiums? Do you know anything about that?
I think the plan, I don't know exact specifics, but if you would allow them to own the policy and be the beneficiary of the policy, but you're the life that's insured. So if I'm the insured person and it's a $500,000 policy, but Jewish Columbus owns it and they're the beneficiary, I think they will subsidize the premium.
Okay.
So there are some strategies. I don't know the specifics of those, but if you're going to give a life insurance that way, that's a tremendous benefit, and they've got the people to talk to over there.
Right. Do either of you have anything else that you want to touch upon?
I think I'm okay. Open it up for questions. And ask Harlan. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I agree.
I just want to mention really quickly that leaving a planned gift to TBS is such a beautiful expression of support for TBS. And please know that Rabbi Ben Jurai would always be there to talk with you about what your passions are and how you would like to support TBS in the long term.
Yeah,
With
I
that,
do want to add one thing, Bobby, if you don't mind,
absolutely.
real quickly. One of the best things I've done in my entire career is work with other advisors like Harlan. I think for people who have thoughts about charitable giving, and of course, everybody should be doing estate planning, having your advisor, your estate planning attorney, and your CPA working together a team is powerful. I've enjoyed that as much as I've enjoyed anything with throughout my career. I've met some wonderful people, and working together, we complement each other very well, and it's just and the client wins long term. Everybody wins long term, actually. So I strongly recommend that. Go to your advisor. They usually start the process, but then bring in the attorney and the CPA and work as a team.
So I do have a question here, and I think, Harlan, this is a question for you. This is from my wife, Stephanie. What's the difference between a living will and a last will and testament?
A living will is a companion document to the healthcare power of attorney. It is when you're alive. It deals with certain types of medical treatment. And basically, if you have a permanent condition, you're in a terminally unconscious state, the living will is your direction to your doctors that you don't want any life-sustaining treatment. And that document then lists individuals for the doctors to notify. Typically, it's a spouse and other close relatives. And then the decision's made not to have any of that life-sustaining treatment. The last will and testament deals with after you've passed away, how you administer the assets, who does that for you, and guardians for your children.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I'm only seeing one question so far. Well, if there are any questions after the fact, feel free to leave them in the comments on the Facebook post, and we will do our best to get them answered. Michael, Harlan, do you have any closing thoughts or things that you would like to share?
I have one closing thought that, and we've done this many times over the year, of course, for a long time, focusing on the capital campaign. But right now, with all of these strategies, I strongly encourage people who have questions to call Bobby, set up an appointment. There's a few of us who are very happy to go to lunch, or well, hopefully one of these days go to lunch, breakfast, or meet with people on a phone conversation to go through these one-on-one and talk about your specifics. So I encourage you to call Bobby on any questions, or me.
And I would agree with that, and just say that a lot of this is today at a pretty high level, and we're talking about general issues, and it's a really good idea to sit down with your advisors to talk about your personal circumstances, your personal questions, your personal goals, and your advisors can help you put documents and a plan in place to do what you want to do, and provide for who you want to provide for.
Well, on that note, there will be more to come on this topic at the annual meeting on June 28th at 10:30. And over the next couple of months, as the Life and Legacy program really starts to pick up steam again, we've kind of hit a little bit of a hurdle with the COVID crisis, but we're looking forward to re-engaging in this conversation in the summer and fall. And again, please reach out to me if you ever have any questions about Life and Legacy, or like to discuss how you can support TBS in the long term. With that, Michael, Harlan, thank you very much for making time tonight.
You're
And
welcome.
we'll keep this conversation going. Thank you for lending your expertise to this conversation.
Thank you, Bobby.
Have a good night, everyone.